Warm welcome to Business Today. I'm Mark Lobel. Britain's largest water supplier, Thames Water, has swung back into profit. New figures show revenues up 42% in the 6 months to September. The turnaround follows a customer bill hike in April and comes after years of pressure over pollution. The company says pollution incidents are down about 20%. Despite the improvement, Thames Water is still buried in debt. Nearly £20 billion worth, or $26 billion worth. It's mostly owned by global institutional investors, including its biggest shareholder, the Canadian pension fund, the Ontario Municipal Employees Retirement System. Well, I got more details from our business editor, Simon Jack.
As you say, it lurched back into profit of £414 million for the 6 months ending September. But as you say, that is entirely due to the fact there was a very sharp increase in bills back in April of some 40%. And a lot of customers will say, hang on a second, I'm paying an awful lot more for a company which is just about in last place when it comes to performance on things like pollution and spills. So as fast as they've been making money, they've been spending it. They were very keen to draw attention to the fact they spent £1.3 billion over the period trying for some capital upgrades to address some of its problems. But the underlying financial situation is dire. They are drowning in debt, very nearly £20 billion. They are running out of cash. They've got a cash lifeline of £1.5 billion, which they've almost used up and will run out in mid-January. There is another, second tranche of that cash, but the current lenders have to agree to release that. And if they don't feel that there is a prospect of getting some kind of deal to restructure this company, there is a possibility that they would refuse to extend that extra money, at which point the company would collapse into a government-supervised administration, in which it could stay in limbo for some time. Current management and the lenders of the company argue if that happens, then it'll be in limbo and the problems it's got will only get worse as it festers. So, yes, a lurch back into profit, but the underlying picture, as I say, remains pretty bad and they're hurtling towards a brick wall. Intense discussions going on about whether this deal can be done. The controversial part of it is that the people who want to restructure it also want some leniency against future fines for things like pollution and spills, and that will be massively controversial.
Now, trade, tech and Russia's war in Ukraine are all on the agenda now that French President Emmanuel Macron has arrived in China for the start of a 3-day visit to Beijing. He'll be meeting President Xi on Thursday at a time of ongoing trade tensions between the EU and China. There's increasing anxiety in Europe at China's growing superiority in electric vehicles and its dominance in the rare earth sector, which could threaten supplies for critical European industries. Here's Joshua Thorpe to explain it all.
President Macron's fourth state visit to China comes at a time of mounting geopolitical and economic tensions between the two countries. China accounts for nearly half of France's overall trade deficit, and public concern over the country's dominance is on the rise. The fast fashion giant Shein is currently embroiled in a significant legal and public controversy in France, primarily over the sale of illegal products, including childlike sex dolls and banned weapons, on its online marketplace. But the bigger concern for France and Europe as a whole is China's dominance in the rare earth sector and its recent decision to restrict the export of those critical minerals which are vital to the European automotive, technology and defence sectors. President Macron will have to execute a delicate balancing act between highlighting the economic and security threats from Beijing and reliance on the world's second largest economy during a time of global trade turmoil. Joshua Thorpe, BBC News.
To the US now, and San Francisco will file the nation's first government lawsuit against manufacturers of ultra-processed food. The city is accusing them of profiting while burdening governments with the cost of treating diseases linked to these products. With the lowdown, here's our North America business correspondent, Michelle Fleury.
These days, ultra-processed foods are everywhere, from chicken nuggets to fizzy drinks, even granola bars marked as healthy. But now, in a first of its kind, 10 major food and drink companies are being sued over ultra-processed food. Among them, Kellogg, General Mills, Nestlé, Mars, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Kraft, Heinz, Conagra and Mondelez. San Francisco City Attorney David Chu accused them of using big tobacco tactics, making products addictive and harmful while raking in profits.
Our case is about companies who design food to be harmful and addictive and marketed their products to maximize profits. Like the tobacco industry, they knew their products make people very sick, but hid the truth from the public, profited from untold billions, and left Americans to deal with the consequences.
The lawsuit, filed on behalf of the state of California, argues that Americans and states are paying billions in dollars in healthcare costs linked to ultra-processed foods, which now make up 70% of the US food supply. However, in a statement, the Consumer Brands Association, a trade group which represents many of the companies, said there is currently no agreed-upon scientific definition of ultra-processed foods and that demonizing this kind of food misleads consumers. Still, in a rare twist, this issue is uniting San Francisco liberals with the Trump administration in trying to curb these foods as part of its Make America Healthy Again mantra.
Michelle Fleury there. Now, in other news, on the earnings front, there was good news from the retail sector. American Eagle Outfitters shares are surging after the retailer lifted its annual sales forecast, betting on celebrity partnerships and marketing campaigns to boost demand during the holiday season. Macy's also raised its annual targets for the second time this year and posted surprise quarterly profit, although its shares fell after a warning about inflationary pressures. India's government has scrapped an order to smartphone makers to preload a state-run cybersecurity app on all new devices after an outcry from politicians, privacy advocates and global tech companies over surveillance fears. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government had privately told companies, including Apple, Samsung and Xiaomi, to preload new phones with an app that cannot be deleted called Sanchar Sati within 90 days. Prada has announced that it has bought Versace, bringing two major Italian luxury fashion homes under one roof. The $1.38 billion deal expands Prada's portfolio of designer brands, including Miu Miu, as it seeks to compete with rivals. Proceeds from the sale will help cut debt for Capri Holdings, Versace's former parent company, the firm said. And finally, the news that a Fabergé egg made for the mother of Russia's last Tsar has sold for a record over $30 million, whilst a man in New Zealand has been accused by police of swallowing a Fabergé pendant as police wait for evidence to emerge. Now, Jaguar Land Rover has refused to comment on reports it has fired the design guru behind the company's controversial electric concept car. Its launch, which you can see here, drew headlines around the world. You might remember it, but not always for the right reasons. According to Autocar, JLR's Chief Creative Officer, Gerry McGovern, has been asked to leave the company, with his role being eliminated with immediate effect. His departure, if confirmed, comes a week after PJ Balaji took over as Chief Executive following the retirement of his predecessor. Well, Stuart Masson is Editorial Director of The Car Expert. Stuart, what do you think is behind... Great to have you. What do you think is behind this departure?
Well, we've got the new CEO who's only been in post for a week or two, previously the CFO at Jaguar Land Rover, and has now stepped up. And the suggestion is that Tata, the Indian parent company of JLR, wasn't particularly impressed with the controversy surrounding this rebrand of Jaguar. At this stage, it's all speculation. The company has said nothing, McGovern has said nothing, but the reports out of India were that he was asked to leave on Monday and was terminated with immediate effect. And really, that's all we know at the moment. But the company has certainly had a lot of controversy over the last 12 months and doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon.
If this is the case, it's a real statement of intent, isn't it? Because Gerry McGovern was super influential over 2 decades. He managed to refashion and design key vehicles in the range, didn't he? So this would be a big move and a loss of a big figure.
It is. Certainly all of the cars in the Land Rover range, in the Range Rover range, have been designed under his leadership. He's got 3 Jaguars on their way, the first of these new electric models that are due to be seen next year. So 3 of those that are already designed, designs are already locked in and basically being prepared for production. But of course, he's not going to be around to see them and to present them to the world.
Now, they're, of course, tough commercial conditions. We had the cyber attack, which we were reporting. It even caused a drop in productivity here in the UK. Do you think just trialling Jaguar's all-electric brand and then having the response that perhaps the advertising of it was too woke was just too much of a risk for the boards to continue with?
It's entirely possible, and again, we're still speculating, but what we have to remember is that Jaguar's previous line of business as a petrol car company was pretty much a failure. The company was really struggling. Land Rover's been doing well on its side of the business, lots of Range Rovers and Defenders and so on going out the door, but the company hasn't had a new model between Jaguar and Land Rover for the last 3 years. Jaguar's petrol models were all pretty much outdated. It had one electric car that was being built by a contractor in Austria because they couldn't build it here in the UK or at its factory in Slovakia. So the company wasn't succeeding as a petrol car manufacturer. It's being reinvented as an electric car manufacturer, but that's a process where it's had to stop building all its petrol cars, stop building any Jaguars at all until it can launch its new models next year. So it's a strategy unlike anything we've seen in the car industry. When we had previous icons like Rolls-Royce and Bentley reinvented themselves some 20 odd years ago, they managed to do it without alienating all their core audience, whereas Jaguar's goal seems to have been to throw out all of its old audience and chase a new one.
Briefly, what do you think this signals for Jaguar's all-electric push then? Any changes?
Unlikely, because the company no longer builds any petrol cars. So it's gone all in on this. And look, this is the future. This is the way the car industry is going. But progress and the transition from fossil fuels to electricity has been slower than was initially predicted. So it's going to happen, but the question is whether or not Jaguar is too far ahead of the curve in this way, in abandoning all of its internal combustion models and going all in on very high priced electric cars, which is a sector of the market that's not doing as well as family mainstream electric cars, which are growing quite rapidly.
OK, Stuart Masson, editorial director at The Car Expert. Thank you for taking us through that. I'm sure we'll find out more from the company itself, if that is indeed true, and if it was boardroom politics behind the decision. But that's Business Today for now.